welcome to lesson number 4 in the Python tutorial series. Today we're going to be looking at texture mapping, which was one of the properties that we kind of skipped over earlier. But each object has a property. Like if we go over here to ground, for example, go to properties, you can see there's a skin texture property that each object has. This lesson is going to center around changing the skin texture so that we can create some unique looking options and objects that don't always appear in Alice worlds. You'll also see down here in texture maps, we'll be able to access some of the features there as well. And I really do like the texture mapping lesson because most of the time when you see programs made in Alice, most of them feel the exact same. They're made using the same objects and the same placement, and a lot of the stuff can start to feel really the same. Even games that are written in Alice can get a little bit boring at times, not because they aren't good ideas, but because the objects have been used just hundreds of times over. By using texture maps, you can take the objects that are in Alice, but change them so that they have their own color, their own style, their own flair, and can really make your program stand out compared to all others. So let's go ahead and get started with texture mapping. So I've got a brand new Alice world open, but for this example I'm going to want to use the space template. Select the space template by going up to File, clicking on New World, and then selecting Space from the menu. I decided that I want to add a planet, or a moon, to this picture right here, to my scene. But I want it to be a high-definition moon. I want it to look really sharp. I'm going to start by adding an object, scrolling over to the Planets category, and I want to have a moon. So I'm going to select the moon object and drag it into my Alice world. When I do so, I realize the default moon in Alice is really small. So let's use our resize tool to make it a little bit larger. Move the object up and down to raise its elevation, and maybe even make it a little bit bigger. While this is well and good for my scene, as I rotate this object, I realize it's not a very good-looking moon. It might as well be a white sphere. I really want to find a higher definition, high-resolution texture to make this moon really stand out. Let's head over to Google and find a good texture map to use with this moon. Open up a web browser and go to Google. We're going to search for moon texture. And a good place to start is the Google Images search. So click on Images for moon texture. And we have an awful lot of different images to work with here. The way an image map or a texture map works is it takes a flat image and essentially stretches it around a 3D object. So if you can imagine taking a piece of paper and trying to fold it over, say, a basketball or a golf ball or whatever object it is you're trying to do, that's what's going to happen with this texture map. Because of that, you're going to look for images that don't have these black corners. This image right here, this image right here, and this image right here wouldn't work very well as texture maps, but most of these others will. Find an image that you think will work for your object, and let's go ahead and download it. Now, I kind of like this image right here, so I'm going to click on this image. And you'll notice that it's got some watermarking on it. It says like Moon Earth up here, and it's got the date and some stuff. When you import this and use it in your object, that will show up on your object as well. So you want to try and find a clean image if possible. We're going to go ahead and use this image anyway, so let's right-click on it, save the image, and you can see I've tried a couple test images down here, so we're going to call this High Resolution Moon Texture 2. I'm going to name my file, and I'm going to save it in my Alice directory. You can really save it in any directory you want, but I'm going to save it in the Alice directory. Click Save. And now let's head back over to our Alice world. Now there's two ways to import textures. You can either go up to File and Import and select your texture there, or from the Object Properties window, you can click Import Texture Map. There's a very important distinction between the two. If I go to File and Import, this texture map will be loaded as a world texture. That means it will be usable on any object in my world. If I use the Import Texture Map feature down here in the Moon Details panel, that texture map will only be usable on the object that I currently have selected. Since I know that this is going to be for this moon and this moon only, I'm going to click Import Texture Map here in the Moon Details panel. The default directory that opens is the Alice Ground Texture folder. Since I didn't save it there, I'm going to go up a directory level and then do it again. And this will take me to my main Alice directory. And here I can see the high resolution moon texture that I downloaded. Once I've selected that, click Import. That will add high resolution moon texture to my list of texture maps down here at the bottom. To apply it to my moon, all I need to do is drag it up to skin texture and release. Now this is a little bit darker than I wanted it to be, and it got a little bit stretched out. But overall, this looks a lot better than the moon that came default in Alice. I can go back to Google, find another map that maybe I want to use a little bit more. So let's try this one right here. Wait for it to download and kind of improve its resolution. There we go. I'm going to save this one in the same directory, and I'm going to call this high resolution moon texture number 3. Click Save. Go back to Alice and import that texture map. Go up 2 directory levels, and there's my high resolution moon texture 3. Click Import, and with it on my list, drag it up to replace that last skin texture. When I rotate this object now, I can see this is a pretty good looking texture for what I want, and that's what I'm going to end up using for my moon. So that moon is textured. I'm going to raise it up off the ground just a little bit so that I can see the ground a little bit better. Let's try a world import for our old texture map. Let's use the high resolution moon texture 2, and let's change the ground to have that texture. Now, I can select the ground either by clicking on it in my window or by selecting it in my objects panel here on the left and import the texture map like I did for the moon. But I want to show you how to import a texture for the world and not just a specific object. I'm going to go to File and Import, find my Alice directory, and here I'm going to use high resolution moon texture 2. That was the darker image that we downloaded first, and click Import. Immediately, nothing will happen. It doesn't show up as a texture map for the ground. You can see I have the ground selected. However, when I go to the skin texture property and click the pull-down menu, I'll see that Moon High Resolution Texture 2 has shown up. I'm going to click on that, and you can see that my moon surface has changed to this rocky, cratery surface. You're getting a little bit of banding here, and that's a result of the image itself. And in Alice, there's not a whole lot you can do to fix that, aside from try some different texture maps to see if they work for you. But at any rate, as we move our camera around, let's say if we're going to move it up here, maybe angle it a little bit, and then take our moon and drag it around, we have now created a scene that's much higher resolution than default Alice will allow us to do. And we can do this for just about any world. If I select File and New, and let's get ourselves a new grass world. I don't like this default grass texture. It's a little too low resolution for me. I'm going to go back over to Google, refine my search, and this time I'm going to do grass texture. And take a look at the images for different types of grasses that I can use. And I kind of like this one right here, so I'm going to click on this. And this is a larger image, so it's going to take a while to render in this window or download in this window. But once the high resolution image pops up, I'm going to right click it, select Save Image As, and I'm going to save this as high resolution grass and hit save. Go back to Alice, make sure that the ground is selected, import texture map, and now I'm going to use the high resolution grass that I just downloaded here, hit import, and drag it to the grass texture slot. I now have a little bit more colorful and a little bit more vibrant grass to use in my world and in my Alice scenes. I can texture any object in this manner. Select the local gallery and let's go to 3D shapes, or I guess it's just called shapes. And from shapes, I'm going to add a box to my world. Then I'm going to resize it to make it a little bit bigger and rotate it to face the camera. What I want to do is create almost like a brick wall out of this right here. Let's head on over to Google and let's search for a brick texture to use on this object. And I can see I've got a lot of brick textures to choose from. I'm going to use this one on the top left, so click on it, save it, call this brick texture, and then go back on over to Alice. Make sure the box is selected, and you can see the default skin texture for these objects right here is none. I'm going to import my new brick texture, and then apply it to the box. You can see I've created a brick wall. Now I might have to play around with the orientation of this object right here and tumble it over to its side and do some things like that, but I've got a high resolution brick image that I can rotate and I can scale around, and you'll have to play with it a little bit because textures can be finicky, but you can reshape any object using this method. And sometimes you can even do cool effects by removing textures altogether. Let's go ahead and go back to our local gallery, select Ancients, and let's pull the angel that we used in the earlier lessons back here. I'm going to resize it so it can be seen a little bit better. Now, a couple things that I can do if I want to change up the way that this angel looks, I can select just her skirt. And I can change the color of just the skirt, not even by using a texture map in this case, but by going to color and changing the color property of just the skirt to a different color. I can make objects a little bit more unique and a little bit different by using this property right here. But what I might want to do is I might want the angel to be a statue. If I select the entire angel, go to Skin Texture, and select None, I've effectively removed any texture map from the angel. Now, I can resize my box pillar here a little bit, drag it over so that it's in the front of the screen. Let's go ahead and sink this down into the ground a little bit. Now let's take the angel and resize her a little bit. And we're going to pull her so that she's on top of the box. That looks about right. And maybe resize her just a little bit. So let's use the resize tool, make her a little bit smaller. There we go. And raise her so she's just above. Maybe turn her a little bit. Using the angel with a removed property, and by using a cube with a brick texture, we've created a pillar that has an angel statue on it rather than an angel object. You can play around with this and make some really neat scenes and do some really cool stuff with your Alice worlds by playing around with textures and colors and those particular properties. Now that you know how to import textures, let's go ahead and do the Lesson 4 challenge program. Your job in the Lesson 4 Challenge program is to create a scene at a museum. The local museum has just opened a new exhibit that features the planets. In this case, I've added 3, Jupiter, Mars, and Earth. You can add as many or as few as you want, but target at least 3. I've used texture mapping to try and create a Roman column look by adding cylinders from the objects from the 3D object category that's in the objects panel. I've also texture mapped 3 spheres. I've used an environment from the environments gallery to make this look as though it's inside, and I've put 2 characters in there who are visiting the museum. They're probably on a date. That's my guess. They look like they're pretty friendly with one another. But I've created a scene of a museum and an exhibit. And I've also played with some of the light levels outside. So if you look outside, you can see there's a door. I've used fog to blur some of the lines, and I've made it nighttime out. So this is an example of a scene that you can create. Create your own unique museum scene with an exhibit, indoors, with people, a realistic museum scene. If you can do that, then you've done a good job following the texture mapping lessons. Just make sure you're using custom texture maps in your final scene. Now, of course, if you have any questions, if something doesn't make sense to you, you missed something in the tutorial, or something was a little bit hard to follow along with, you are more than welcome to leave your questions in the comments, and I'll help you any way that I can. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.